right, Cordelia? I don't know if you're aware, Cordelia and I are cousins. I wish I got her voice, but that never came with me. I want to say, first of all, congratulations to the new partners and to the new Caribbean business. It is an honor and a privilege to be here today. I was elected when I was 25 years old to the State House. In 2002, I remember Mr. Manny Casiano doing a lot of interviews on how people elected to the State House was thinking regarding the business sector. And I was being interviewed many times, and after that, I was Speaker of the House, and there were many interactions with Caribbean business at the time. And I think it was time to get Caribbean business back into life in Puerto Rico. So congratulations to all people related to this big step in Puerto Rican economy, because I believe having just one outlet designed to discuss what the private sector needs and how the economy of the island may move forward, it is vital to the economy of the island. So I want to say again, thank you to Felipe, to Jamil, Carlos, and Rafa for making this a reality. And in the memory of Manny Casiano and his family and all the people who work with him, they literally put the first stone on what is today Caribbean business. So having said that, thank you for hosting me in this summit. I believe that bringing together the island's most influential business leaders, investors, and policymakers, where's my clicker? Here. Will define the future of Puerto Rico. I want to be brief in so many areas, but I really want to discuss what is the government doing in order to get our business together and not to literally constrain the private sector and be an obstacle, but how we empower private sector. That should be the mantra and the way and the policy the government of Puerto Rico is not heading. What used to be a conversation about debt, disaster, and economic contraction, today it is a conversation about opportunity, investment, and momentum. The fact that you are here at this summit celebrating the official relaunch of Caribbean business means that the conversation about Puerto Rico has changed. And it's not by accident. I believe that that's a result of the change of leadership, execution, and the implementation of policies focused on, again, empowering the private sector as the engine for Puerto Rico's economic development, and the clear understanding that the government role is to be a facilitator, not an obstacle. And that's a big change. When you revise all the rules and regulations and laws of the island, you can see that the vision of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was putting more obstacles to the private sector, regulations, requirements, reports to be filed. Now, our vision is in the contrary, in the opposite, trying to minimize and to get rid of all the economic development of the island. So this morning I want to set the stage clear in some areas that you will hear throughout the rest of the summit, and I want to tell you what we're doing directly and what has been done in case of putting Puerto Rico again in a competitive jurisdiction in the United States. We're right now competing with DR, we're competing with Costa Rica, we're competing with North Carolina. Those are the areas where we are competing in terms of manufacturing, which is our main goal on the island. I want to begin talking about fiscal responsibility. Right now, we were having some meetings with the Oversight Board during the last month and literally yesterday. And I feel we're going to be pretty close to announce something between today and tomorrow, and working with them to have a balanced budget again. But everything we have built rests on fiscal credibility as well, which is the cornerstone of the government that is putting the house back in order. For the first time since Promesa in 2016, our administration has developed and received the Oversight Board certification of a balanced budget, first time in 10 years. And we want to do the same thing during this budget season. And the markets have noticed that in March of this year, Moody's ratings published its first substantive deep report on Puerto Rico in 5 years, highlighting record employment, economic resiliency, and improvement to the energy grid. And in that sense, those are the areas that we're focusing just to gain back credibility at the markets. But I want to talk a little bit about the investment and the focus. What is the goal of the island at this time? We are focusing on reshoring. For that, the global supply chain realignment, geopolitical pressures, and the U.S. economic and security priorities are redirecting the capital. And we are working aligned with the President administration to get those things online in Puerto Rico as well. So last year, I signed an executive order, 25012, to establish and implement a reshoring strategy that includes an advisory council composed of leaders from the private sector, many of them are here today, as a fast-track procedure for issuing permits, an executive concierge at the Department of Economic Development and Commerce that works as a one-stop shop for all companies that want to establish and expand its presence on the island. The results, in the past 16 months, 21 companies have expanded their operations on the island. 5,300 new jobs committed in manufacturing and reshoring just because of this strategy. $2.3 billion in new investment committed just in 2025. And to showcase some of these things we have achieved, I'll just give you an example. Eli Lilly is investing more than $1.2 billion to expand and modernize its Carolina facility. Amgen is executing a $650 million expansion in Juncos as well. The exports reached $62.4 billion in 2025, a 3% increase, and our trade balance grew 30% to $7.4 billion. I know there's a lot of noise. I know there's a lot of challenges between the state legislator and this governor, but the results are there. And I'm not gonna be distracted on those noises or gossip. I think we got a goal, and we are committing to that goal. We have a record high labor force, 5.6% unemployment, 44.8 participation rate, which is the highest in the last 16 years, and more than 767,000 private sector workers, which is all-time high as well. Puerto Rico is a world-class destination, and that's the reason we are putting some effort as well in tourism. And in that sector, we record 1.6 million passengers just in cruises during last year. 5 years in a row, we've been having a record of arrivals in the airport Luis Muñoz Marin. When you see those numbers, those are results of the measures that have been taken, and there's still more to come. And then I need to go to the permitting reform. One of the biggest issues that we saw when we arrived was how long is the process to a small business entrepreneur or any business to establish a shop on the island or even construct a house. And more than between 10 and 30% is the cost of those permits on the island. So I conveyed the private sector at the time, and many of you came together in a task force with the government, with the Secretary of Economic Development and many others to design what should be the new permitting reform. And almost during a year, there were several meetings, and then it came the final recommendation. More than 819 pages for a new permitting and planning code in Puerto Rico. Instead of having 45 different laws and thousands of pages of regulations, let's have just one code that will be easier for anyone trying to establish a business on the island. And I can go with different examples. I know you know that better than me. There's 577 days of a lady in Loíza that wanted to reconstruct their house after the impacts of Irma and Maria. Almost 2 years to get it done. Or the small business entrepreneur that wanted to open a coffee shop that stood more than 380 days just to get a permit. Well, the guy who was establishing a franchise ice cream store, it took him 477 days just to get the permits done. And we're not talking about those that already have a shop in a commercial place and they're changing the key or changing the franchise that need to wait for an inspection. Or in these new days, when many people work in a remote way in their houses, that needs to wait to the government to inspect their house in order to allow them to practice there. Those are things of the past. So that's the reason we're talking about having a permit reform that allow, reduce, and lower the cost of living and doing business in Puerto Rico. That's the goal, is to literally allow the private sector to thrive the economy, not the other way around. We inherit a system with 45 separate laws, fragmented processes, contradictory requirements, and no accountability at all from the government agencies. You may have 10 or 12 government agencies delaying the process with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of litigation delays, and the island ranked as the last in economic freedom in the whole United States. Now we're replacing that with this new code. One agency is the one who's going to be doing the permits. One law, one code, one regulation, and one clear standard that prevails over contradictions. The new permitting code is a philosophical refocus that rests on 6 pillars. No more fragmentation, legal certainty, clear jurisdiction across the agencies, limited subjective direction by standardizing criteria, better accountability, and balance between economic development and environmental protection. These results of what we have already done in an administrative way. We'll give you some examples. I don't know if we got it here. 128,000 permits applications were processed during 2025, with a 92% adjudication rate. New permiso único, o el nuevo permiso único, and that's odd, because saying that you were having a unique permit was not real. You got many agencies and you need to renew that. Now we're talking about a real unique permit. At that time, it increased from 81% from 11,000 in 2024 to almost 21,000 in 2025, the double the amount of permit being granted just during the last year. Interagency recommendation cycle time cut from 55 days to 27 days. We did that with an executive order. Now I want to do it by law, and that's the reason we filed that bill. And I want to say thank you to all the private sector that went publicly endorsing, recommending, and supporting this bill. I know it's not written in stone, but this is the way to go if we want to change the economy of the island and we want to have more small businesses being successful in Puerto Rico. 850 priority projects approved under the expedited executive order process in 2025-0003. And I just want to give you one more. One of the big issues when we took office was that we were just spending 3% the expenses for federal funding regarding CDBG DR, just 3%. Now we got a meeting this week with people from HUD. We are 28% of literally disbursing the funds. Still low, but it's almost 15% from the last year exchange. And one of the issues is we forbid permits, local permits, if you are having a federal project being approved. Why? The government of Puerto Rico needs to stop project from happening if that project already have a federal permit. So that's one of the changes we're doing. Another one that really concerned me a lot is the energy situation. That was the main issue back in 2024 and 2025. And literally the only thing that was not allowing me to sleep at night. I continuously receive calls from the energy czar at 1 a.m. in the morning if we're heading to the peak of demand in terms of generation. And one of the biggest threats for Puerto Rico economy is precisely not having enough energy to get things done. So another concern for investors about Puerto Rico is the reliability of the electrical grid. And this is why we made it our most urgent infrastructure priority. In 16 months, our generation system has restored approximately 1,200 megawatts of generation capacity. We are also installing 430 megawatts of industrial scale battery storage, which will reduce by 90% load shedding events. Installation of 244 megawatts of peaking turbines is arriving now, which will provide faster responses to increased demand. And I know Winnie and the people from Genera know what I'm talking about. We have directed $365 million in Federal Department of Energy funds to critical generation repairs, including Costa Sur 5, San Juan 6, Aguirre 2, and Palo Seco 4. And we're also moving to diversify our energy mix. Instead of having just bunker C of fuel that has been burned and is the most expensive fuel on the island, we are moving that conversation from bunker C and diesel to natural gas. And those are projected to yield more than $95 million in annual savings that we can then move to lower the cost of electricity on the island. And we have launched a competitive acquisition process for 800 megawatts of temporary energy, so we may have it there in case we got peak of demand without having enough generation on the island. That's still sitting in the oversight board. And then at this time, we're having another competitive acquisition process to install 3,000 megawatts of new permanent generation paid by private sector. And we are relying on this process that should be done at the end of this year. For what? For constructing and having the new energy system for the Puerto Rico of the future. The difference between December of 2024 and May of 2026 is very clear. I promised during the campaign that we will fix the issue, and we are doing so. We even named an energy czar to connect the dots between the private operators, Genera, Luma, and of course, Ecoelectrica and the rest of the stakeholders. With that, the Department of Energy, EPA, the Department of Interior has been helping us out during the last year. I got an opportunity to speak about this issue with the President of the United States, with the Secretary of Energy, and many others at the federal level. And the help we are receiving is established by continuous visitors and task force coming from the Department of Energy almost every month during the last year and continue to this one. And despite what we have done in generation capacity front, Luma's operation of the transmission system and our distribution system is still our biggest challenge. The electricity we generate needs to be distributed to people's homes and businesses. I think Luma had its chance, and Puerto Rico is done with that example. That is why we have filed a legal action, not just to terminate the contract, but to litigate and mediate all the areas that are not fulfilling their contract with Puerto Rico. We are pursuing an orderly transition to a new operator while safeguarding the system stability. So those are just a few of the improvements and the areas we're looking into energy. But we're looking also to the tax reform. And we did file during the last year the first and second part of the tax reform. More than 12 bills were approved, but still we want to lower the rates for corporations and individuals as well. And I hope we can achieve that during this year. We're working with the Oversight Board to achieve some of those goals, and I know many of you here in the room will love them when they're done. I know I wish to speak a lot more, but housing is another big issue. We do have a lot of construction and federal funding regarding projects of construction in the island that have the biggest burden when we are talking about permits. And we have today, we talked about tourism. We want to make Puerto Rico like the Miami of the Caribbean. We're still talking with a lot of the cruise ship lines. We need to have more ports in the island. So that's another conversation we do have with the private operator on the island, the federal agencies as well, and we're looking to acquire some land just to add some crew hubs on the island as well, not just in the San Juan area. So there's been a lot of investment in many areas. We're fixing airports, we're fixing ports, we're fixing roads, more than $150 million just repairing highways and roads on the island. We need to improve our free zones as well. I was having a discussion during this week regarding opportunity zones and what new tracks are going to be added during the summer with the federal agencies as well. So there are many opportunities for Puerto Rico lying ahead. We just need to get our things together and make it happen. And I cannot do it without the help of the private sector. So in that sense, as the governor of the island, I will literally award the private sector for helping us move the common economy forward. That should not be a role of the government. The government should not be the obstacle or the stone in the middle of the road. To that sense, my topic for these opening remarks was policy and business alignment. Are we on the same page? And my answer will be, hell yes, we are on the same page. That's the reason I want to say thank you to our allies in the private sector like you. I'm confident that we will continue to build the new Puerto Rico for the next decade.